Well, good morning, Jagender Rana here. The topic for our discussion today is commercial general liability insurance. Commercial general liability insurance. The foundation of commercial general liability insurance coverage commercial general liability insurance. The foundation of commercial liability insurance covers is commercial general liability. This liability covers a wide range of liability risk. Wide range of liability risk exposures faced by most organizations. These loss exposures falls under the following categories of risk. What? Premises and operational liability, products and completed operations liability, liability for various international torts. So what is the background of this policy? In 1941, the commercial general liability cover standing for comprehensive general liability policy was introduced in 1941 by the casualty insurance rating bureaus operating at the time in the United States. So the comprehensive general liability policy covered both premises and operations liability, which are insurable under two separate policy covers. The comprehensive general liability policy also included all locations and operations of the insured, whether scheduled in the policy or not. The 1986 new commercial general liability forms were introduced, restricting coverage to the scheduled premises and operations and omitting the coverage for products and completed operations. Thus, the old comprehensive general liability policy has been replaced by the new commercial general liability policy with restricted covers as mentioned above. Now, new CGL, new commercial general liability. So, there are basically two versions of the commercial general liability form. The occurrence version. The coverage triggers of a occurrence form. The coverage triggers of a occurrence form is bodily injury or property damage that occurs during the policy period. Then claim made version. The trigger of a claim made form is the making of a claim against the insured during the policy period. So for bodily injury or property damage, accepting above difference in coverage triggers both versions of the commercial general liability policy are same with the following common sections for coverage: limit, conditions, definitions, etc. The coverage A, that is bodily injury and property damage. Coverage B, personal and advertising injury liability. Coverage C, medical payments, supplementary payments, and who is an insured. Limits of insurance, conditions, and definitions. Now the section 1 says coverage A for bodily injury and property damage. Now what is the insuring agreement? The insurer shall pay those sums that the insured becomes legally obliged to pay as damage because of bodily injury as property damage to which the insurance applies. The insurer will have the right and duty to defend the insured against the suit seeking damages. However, the insurer will have no duty to defend the insured against any suit seeking damages for bodily injury or property damage to which this insurance does not apply. That means the insurer at his discretion or at his direction investigate any occurrence and settle any claim or suit that may result. But the amount the insurer will pay for damages is limited to the amount described in Schedule 3 or section 3 of the policy, that is limit of insurance. So the insurer's right and duty to defend ends when we have used up the applicable limit of insurance in the payment of judgments or settlement under provision under coverage A or B, the medical expenses under coverage under C, no other obligations or liability to pay sums or performs act or services covered unless explicitly provided for under supplementary payment coverage A and B. So this insurance applies to bodily injury and property damage only. If the bodily injury or property damage is caused by an occurrence that takes place in the coverage territory, the bodily injury or property damage did not occur before the retroactive date, if any, shown in the declaration or after the end of the policy period, and all claims for damages because of the bodily or property damage is first made against any insured during the policy period or an extended reporting period. So a claim by a person or an organization asking damages will be declined to have been made at the earliest of the following times. When notice of such claim is received and recorded by any insured or by us, whichever comes first. When any settlement is made as per insuring agreement, all claims for damages because of property damage causing loss to the same person, including damages claimed by any person or organization for care or loss of service or death resulting in any time from the bodily injury, will be deemed to have been made at the time of the first of these claims is made against any insured. Then comes exclusions. Expected or intended injury, contractual liability, liquor liability, workers' compensation and similar laws, employer's liability, pollution liability, aircraft, auto and watercraft mobile equipment, war, damage to owned, rented or occupied property, damage to product of the insured, property damage to the work or completed operations of the insured, damage to impaired property as property not physically injured, product recall, work or completed operations, personal and advertising injury, and electronic data. Then the salient features of the insuring agreement of coverage. The insured must be legally obliged to pay damages. The damages must result from bodily injury or property damage. The policy must apply to the bodily damage or property damage. The bodily damage or property damage must be caused by an occurrence. The occurrence must take place in the coverage territory. The bodily damage or property damage must occur during the policy period. The claimant policy does not contain the provisions. And B, coverage B, that is personal and advertising injury liability. So the coverage B insuring agreement is similar to the coverage A. Insuring agreement in many ways. The insurer agrees to pay those sums that the insured becomes legally liable to pay as damages. In addition, the insurer agrees to defend the insured against any suit seeking such damages. However, instead of responding to bodily injury, claims and property coverage, B responds to claim for personal injury and advertising injury and advertising to which the insurance applies. So the CGL policy defines personal injury and advertisement injury to include many to the intentional torts, some of which are listed below. Definitions of personal injury and advertising injury say personal injury means injury other than bodily injury arising out of one or more of the following offences: false arrest, detention or imprisonment, malicious prosecution, the wrongful eviction from or wrongful entry to the invasion of the right of the private occupancy of a room, dwelling or premises occupied by owner of a person on behalf of owner, landlord or lessor, oral or written application, oral or written publication of materials that slander a libels person or organization or criticizes a person's or organization's product or goods or services. So oral or written publication of materials that violates a person's right of privacy. Note, coverage B applies to personal injury only if the injury is caused by an offence arising out of the named insured's business, excluding advertising, publishing, broadcasting, or telecasting done by or for the named insured. So, offences arising out of the advertising, publishing, broadcasting, or telecasting done by or for the named insured, etc., is not covered as advertising injury unless the insured is in the business of the advertising, publishing, broadcasting, or telecasting. So, advertising injury means injury arising out of one or more of the following offences: oral or written publication of material that slanders or revels a person or organizations, or disparage or undermines a person's or organization's goods, products, or services. Oral or written publication of materials that violates a person's right to privacy. Misappropriation of advertising ideas or style of doing business. Infringement of copyright, title, etc., or slogans. So the coverage B applies to the advertising injury only if the injury is caused by an offence committed in the course of advertising the named insured's goods, products, or services. Thus, coverage B is not appropriate for insuring the advertising injury liability exposure of an advertising agency or firms involved in providing advertising services for others. Now comes coverage C, that is medical payments. So, medical payments coverage is not liability insurance because it's paid regardless of whether the insured is legally liable or not. However, the coverage is frequently included in liability policy as the way of providing some small amount of coverage for certain minor injury cases without having to ascertain liability. So the purpose of this provision is to make prompt settlement and to satisfy the potential liability claimants, avoiding larger liability claims. If this cover is not needed, it can be excluded by endorsement. Exclusions of the CGL. CGL medical payment coverage does not apply to bodily injury of foreign persons like any insured, employees, partners, managers, directors, etc. Anyone hired to do work or on behalf of an insured or a tenant of an insured. A person injured on the part of the named insured premises which the person normally occupies. A person who is entitled to collect workers' compensation or disability benefits for injury. A person injured while taking part in athletics. A person with bodily injury included within the completed operational hazard. A person with bodily injury excluded under coverage. Then comes supplementary payments. So this section of CGL form describes the cost that the insurer will pay with respect to any claim the insurer investigate to settle any suit to defend the insured against under coverage A or coverage B. Defense costs inclusive of all supplementary payments are payable in addition to the applicable limits of performance. Then the question is, who is insured? This section describes the person and organization that qualifies for being insured under CGL policy. Various persons are considered to insured under CGL policy because of their family or business relationship to a named insured in the following cases. If the named person is individual, the spouse is also the insured, but only in respect of the conduct of a business of the named insured, that is sole proprietor. If the named insured is a partnership firm, its partner and their spouses are also insured, but only in respect to the conduct of a business of the named insured. If the named insured is a limited company, the members of the managers of the company are also insured, but only in respect of the conduct of the business of this named person. If the named insured is an organization other than firm or a limited company, such as a corporation or association, the executive officers and directors are also the insured, but only in respect of the conduct of a business of the insured. Thank you. Thank you very much.